Is the new Mercedes-Benz CLS sexy? Slinky? Maybe just a bit too smooth for its own good? You have a look and form your own opinion. Styling is a big deal for a car like the CLS, because if you're looking at one of these, you've foregone the option of something more sensible like an E-Class or an S-Class even. And I guess it's got to make a statement, but look, I'm just not sure what that statement is.
The third generation CLS follows the footsteps of its predecessors in offering a streamlined, swoopy alternative to the sedans and wagons of the E-Class line. But Mercedes-Benz's chief designer, Gordon Wagner, seems to have taken his new mantra of less complexity to a whole new level with this car.
Wagner has been quoted as saying something like, if it looks good, take away a line. If it still looks good, take away another one. Although that might be a problem for some buyers, because in this spec, the AMG, there might not be quite enough in the way of lines. That might not necessarily be a bad thing. I like smooth peanut butter, but sometimes you can get more out of crunchy peanut butter, if you get my drift. But I guess the CLS has always been about looking smooth.
Enough of my opinion about the styling. You need to know that this new model is bigger than its predecessor, but also more practical. For the first time ever, this four-door coupe, as Benz calls it, has 5 seats. That used to be left to the shooting brake wagon model, but that's been dropped due to poor sales. Let's check out the interior, because there's heaps to talk about. Australian buyers are set to get a pair of 12.3-inch screens up front, one for the driver and another to control the media system. It's supplemented by a central rotary dial controller, and Apple CarPlay and Android Auto will be standard.
I've said it before and I'll say it again, Mercedes-Benz's media system isn't the most simple out there. There are menus upon menus, but once you get the hang of it, it's actually really intuitive. Of course, the new Mercedes CLS is focused on style as well as practicality. Obviously, there are things like you'd expect, cup holders up front, bottle holders in the doors, and cup holders in the back. But there are some really, really neat touches, like ambient lighting that changes when you change the temperature. So the vents have lights in them, and they'll turn blue when you turn the temperature down, and red when you turn it up. That's pretty neat. So, the front is very impressive. Let's check out the back seat. Taller occupants will have to watch their head getting in and out. And look, I'm 6 foot tall and I don't think I'd want to be here for very long. That's the custom with these so-called four-door coupes. And this new generation CLS has 5 seats, where the previous one used to have 4. Although I don't think I'd want to be the guy in the middle either.
But the fact there are 40-20-40 split-fold seats adds some practicality, and the boot is a good size at 520 litres. Now, let's get to how it drives.
We're in the Mercedes-AMG CLS 53 4MATIC Plus. Now that's a mouthful of a name, and there's a mouthful of technology under the bonnet. It's a straight 6 with a twin scroll turbocharger and an electric turbocharger and a 48 volt system. Now, if that makes no sense to you, here's an explainer.
The CLS models we get will have a form of what Mercedes-Benz calls the EQ Boost system, which is a 48 volt electric setup that can supplement the combustion engine by implementing battery power for short bursts of extra performance. Plus, it has an advanced energy recuperation system that can feed the battery while you're driving. What all that means is that the electric bit can work both ways, by helping cut fuel use when you don't need the combustion engine, while also boosting performance if you need it. But it won't actually drive the wheels ever, so there's no electric range or anything like that.
It has Mercedes-AMG's 9-speed automatic transmission and an adaptive all-wheel drive system. And to drive, it is pretty damn impressive. It doesn't necessarily grab you by the scruff of your neck and throw you towards the horizon, but it'll do 0 to 100 in 4.5 seconds. The shifts are really smooth and the power is really linear in the way that it gets delivered. Some people might find the steering to be just a little bit heavy at lower speeds, particularly the AMG version. The other models don't necessarily suffer from that. But the ride is really impressive. The AMG models have adaptive air suspension, and it does a really good job of cosseting the people in the cabin, even in the sportiest setting. With a 0 to 100 time of 4.5 seconds, it is rapid, but it's not punishing or brutal in the way that the existing CLS 63 was. But that's not what this car's all about. It's about being a technical and attractive and luxurious powerhouse model. Something quite different for AMG, I think. Some other things I'll tell you about the drive experience. I love the way that it pops and crackles, and it sounds brilliant for a 6-cylinder engine. I think some of that is audio trickery, but it does a really good job of making you feel like you're driving something pretty quick and pretty expensive and pretty exciting. One thing I'm not such a fan of is the brake pedal action. It's a bit hard to judge, particularly in traffic. So if you want to try and get the best fuel consumption you can get, you'll have to put it in eco mode, and in doing so, you'll be able to use that electric system a bit more readily. It'll glide, as Mercedes-Benz calls it. If the AMG model isn't your cup of tea, there's going to be a couple of other models in the lineup, including the CLS 450, which uses a slightly different version of the same drivetrain, and then there's going to be the CLS 350, which is going to use a 2-litre 4-cylinder turbo, and it's also going to have that 48-volt electric system, so it's a high-tech lineup.
Of course, buyers will have plenty of safety equipment on offer as standard. In fact, there's too much to go through without making you bored. So be sure to check out the written review at carsguide.com.au for all the details.
So what's the conclusion on the new generation CLS? Is it better than the old one? Yeah, it is. Technically, it's a much better car, but it's not as manic, it's not as intimidating as the previous generation, particularly this AMG version. Is that going to be a problem? Not necessarily, I don't think. There'll still be buyers for it, and its looks alone are going to get people through the door.